Interest and participation in an alternative food supply has been gaining ground in the early years of this new century. Known as local food, the movement stems from the failings of the industrial food model. We all know there are problems with our food. Health and environmental concerns, food safety and cost are all making headlines. We're unsure of what to eat at a time when we're eating food so different than we ever have. How on earth did we get here? From the beginning, America had more land than labor, but with modern mechanization, agricultural production flourished. American abundance began supplying hungry industrial cities in Europe. The global commodity trade had come of age. Scientific advances further increased yields, less labor was needed, and people left the farm. After World War II, munitions factories shifted to producing fertilizer. Farming became a chemical process, and agribusiness was born. With an increased abundance of food, the cost to grow a crop was more than it was worth. Government subsidies began, and that's when Secretary of Agriculture Earl Butz famously told farmers to adapt or die. For many, it was the end of the family farm.
European settlers recognized this area because of the microclimate. This is all old lake bottom soil, some of the richest sandy loam in the world. In this county, at one point we hosted the largest concentration of vegetable growers of any county in the world. Erie County peaked out at about 330 vegetable growers.
I've farmed since I was a sophomore in high school, and we gradually grew and developed a farm that we were growing about 1,200 acres of commercial vegetables. Had a pretty good business. We lost that entirely in the 80s.
You know, interest rates had hit 21% during that period of time, and they had a hailstorm that came in and completely wiped them out. They'd had some good years. That being said, if you were to ask my dad, he wouldn't talk about an excuse of interest rates or a hailstorm.
I was a poor manager. I made a lot of mistakes. We lost the farm completely. Everything we had. So it was start over time.
We were fortunate to hook up early on with Jean-Louis Paladin, who was one of the first chefs to come to the United States from France. And so Jean-Louis coming in here with a funny accent from France. He's saying, look, your stuff is shit. If you want to sell to me, you must, you know, and everybody's like, who the hell is this guy coming into our country? This is the greatest country in the world. Who is he to think that he can come in here and tell us our stuff is not? Doesn't he realize that, you know, we produce food cheaper than any other country in the world, and he's gonna, but here we were desperate for a way to be able to survive in agriculture. And here's Jean-Louis saying, look, do it the way that I'm telling you and we'll support it. Grow it without chemical, grow for the quality, grow for the flavor, grow for the flavor, grow for the flavor. Pick it at the right size where it's the most tender, the most succulent that you can imagine, and we'll support it. And it was a tough concept. It was a total change from everything that we'd been taught.
A conventional farmer today, under current conditions, is forced to do what he's doing. When he has genetically modified crops that he can spray chemicals on that completely eradicate the weeds, he has a prescription to grow a crop. And our farmers are tremendous in this country. They have kept us in a cheap food mode for so long, with the government's help, that it's amazing what we've done in this country. So I'm in no position to say, you know, that's not right. All I can say is that we think that growing vegetables naturally makes more sense.
So many farmers, ourselves included at one time, we didn't realize we were growing food. We were growing a commodity. And there's a big disconnect there. But when you realize that you're really producing food, you understand that there's a greater sense of responsibility to the folks who are going to put that product on their table and feed their children with it.
We farm the soil, not the plant. What we want to do is take care of that soil in the best possible way so that we provide it with everything from a natural standpoint that it needs.
This is our compost site, and this really is the
the cornerstone of our sustainable agricultural program. It, in essence, is a microbe farm. If you have vibrant, healthy ecosystems in the soil, any plant we grow will do well. And the spin-off to that is you get a better quality product, you get better color, better flavor, better shelf life, better nutritional values, better antioxidant levels. Everything that happens as a result of well-balanced ecological farming, everything is good. There are no negative downsides to that.
I remember going with my father to the Cincinnati stockyards. He would load up a bunch of lambs and he'd drive them down there. And they'd go on the scale and get weighed, and then they'd go in the back. They were on. And then we'd go and we'd sit, you know, in the low chairs beside the big desk with the big chair. And my father would say to the guy behind the big desk, "What are you paying for lambs today?" After they're already in the plant. And he would say, "Whatever you wanted," you know. And my father would go, "Okay, I'll take it." And we'd drive home, and my father lost money every year he had that farm. So I went away to college, I came out here, I started another farm, I started raising sheep. And so what did I do? I didn't know any different. I put the lambs in a truck when they're ready, I drive them down to the broker down at the end of the road. I sit in the little chair beside the big desk, and I say to the guy, "What are you paying for lambs today?" And he tells me whatever he wants. Well, about that time, I was approached by the food buyer from Chez Panisse, the restaurant in Berkeley, and they wanted to work directly with farmers and buy whole lamb from me.
I understand that farming and ranching is a big part of what cooking's about. 85% of it is about finding those foodstuffs. It really all began when I went to France when I was 19. I had an awakening. I had never really experienced food in that way. People went to the markets every day to buy the food. You had to stand in line at the baker and wait for the morning's bread or wait for the bread in the evening. We ate mussels right out of the water. And I had this whole sense of aliveness around eating. It was a way I wanted to live. So I came back here and I tried to find those ingredients, and I couldn't find them. And I thought, well, if I open up a little restaurant, maybe that would give me access to the suppliers.
We recognized early on from a marketing standpoint that we wanted to at least initially have customers that were highly visible and well respected. And that was a huge light bulb going off, because all of a sudden we're not selling through middlemen, and we're avoiding, you know, the international commodity market.
It just was great for us to have someone else that we could rely on for a certain quality of the food. The taste was really important, and the way that he took care of the lambs was really important.
You know, there's always somebody saying New Zealand lamb is cheaper, Australian lamb is cheaper, I can get it here. Well, you know, we don't play that game. Our approach is to produce the highest quality, cleanest lamb that we can possibly do, and we're constantly working to make that better. Yes, it's expensive, but it's an incredibly much better product than what's commercially available. And so that's how we seek and get support for what we're doing.
You are told that food should be cheap. I think we have to learn to understand that we have been educated by a fast food system that tells us that cooking is drudgery. It's much easier to go out and buy it.
As a nation, we expect cheap food to be an inalienable American right. And it makes sense considering we spend less of our income on food than any other industrial nation. We have become creatures of convenience. We can now make up for a missed meal with a snack designed to be eaten with one hand, or put dinner on the table in less than 15 minutes. And we can do it all with a dizzying array of food products. More than 17,000 new ones are introduced each year. But beneath the bright packaging are foods laden with fat and high fructose corn syrup, major contributors to our national obesity epidemic. Another less visible expense comes in the use of oil, natural gas, and coal that industrial food production now demands. By most accounts, 1/5 of our national fossil fuel consumption goes to the growing, packaging, and transporting of food.
As the host of a popular home improvement show,
we've set out primarily to be close to our customers, to produce food real close to our customers. This is the environmental side of our farm, is the fact that we don't ship very far. There's still a lot of restaurants that don't buy anything from local farms. In fact, the vast majority don't. A lot of them now realize that that is the way to get the best ingredients. And what we've been trying to do is get people to notice the vegetables on the plate.
Since the menu is driven by what the farmer brings in, it's so much more improvisational. I would say the vegetables drive our restaurant. I mean, they're like coming in fresh and with the chance to get old, and our goal is just to deal with them.
The restaurants that we work with best either write their menu every day, rewrite their menu every day, or have a lot of specials, because we only want to pick what's perfect that week. If something doesn't, we have it out in the field, but it doesn't look great, we'll try to wait. We don't want to sell them something that they're not going to be real happy with. So it not only evolves season to season, it evolves week to week.
We should be supporting the people that are working here. You know, if our farmers and our ranchers are making a good living, they're going to stay here. And, and right now with the oil shortage and the way things are going, why do we need something that's coming across country, or even if it's, from California, when we have those products here in Oregon? It's exciting for us when we have customers that come in and they're really excited about the food, not necessarily that they would go home and cook that dish, but that we can say, oh, well, the eggs in your pasta are from Square Peg Farm, and she sells those on Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. They can go and buy those and take them home and create something with these same ingredients and feel like they are both part of the local community and the local farming community, but they also feel a connection with us and with the restaurant, because then they can talk to us about what they've chose to do with the same ingredients that we're using.
With the growth of farmers' markets, an alternative food system is being established. Heirloom varieties of vegetables and other foods normally missing in supermarkets are being reintroduced. People are returning to the pleasures of seasonal eating, the way our great-grandparents ate. These markets are also fostering and supporting a generation of young farmers who are finding that it is once again possible to make a living from the land. And it's not just happening in small cities like Portland, Oregon.
Coming to the green market, to the farmers markets at Union Square and other locations around New York City for over 25 years. I mean, before I even started my own restaurant. The farmers are selling at their stands, and so over that course of time you develop some very close relationships with those people, and you start to learn about how is food produced. Where does our food come from? Why are this year's cherries so much better than last year's? And they, of course, know the answers because they're there out in the field every day. I want to be connected to the natural world and have a sense of what is the season, what is coming, what's coming in, what's going out. And I want to be connected to people. And the market is an extraordinary place to be connected to people, and to people who are passionate about food. People are making that decision more and more. They're spending their money, and because they want to know where their food comes from. They want to know what the values are that are embedded in the food. And the only way they can do that is by shopping in that kind of a place. That's not new to New York, and that's why it worked when Native Americans were here. That's why it worked when the first settlers were here 350 years ago.
The race toward cheaper food has driven farmers and ranchers to reduce their costs in many ways. One significant strategy has been to increase the scale of their operations. By using cheap labor, cheap corn feed, and by operating on a mass scale of production, the U.S. beef industry has been able to cut their prices by nearly half since 1960. But there are hidden costs attached to conventional farming and ranching methods. Mass-scale operations bring about quality control issues, resulting in food safety problems. Food recalls due to E. coli and salmonella poisoning are in the news with unfortunate frequency. The Center for Disease Control estimates that foodborne illnesses are the cause of 5,200 American deaths each year.
If you buy a pound of ground beef in the supermarket, you're buying a composite of hundreds, if not thousands, of cows. And so if any one of those cows had E. coli problem, well then it's spread through that whole, it's all mixed up in that same batch. And then it goes out in every direction to many states. And so this is a problem of scale. I moved to Oregon in 1973, and within a couple of years started back on the path of recreating the family farm, and basically have built that incrementally since then. Along that path, we were always trying to figure out how to do it organically or as naturally as possible and minimize the use of synthetic or chemical inputs. The greatest single factor in all livestock disease is density. And that's regardless of whether it's a feedlot, which we knew was bad, or even management-intensive grazing. So I took that back home and started thinking about my operation, because we were still having more parasite problems than I cared for. With lowering the density of the sheep, but bringing other livestock onto the farm, we could create a more diverse ecology that would keep the parasite level at a low level. The sheep will come out here and they'll just eat what they want. We'll turn the cattle in after the sheep, and they are less selective, and they will just mow everything off. They're going to basically vacuum up parasites that have been left by the sheep. And because they're less susceptible to parasites, it's not going to harm them in a way it would sheep. The rotation is sheep first, then cattle, and then we'll follow behind with the ducks, and the ducks do their thing with breaking up the thatch or whatever and clean the pastures up more. Get some irrigation, ideally in between that cycle after the ducks come out. Let the grass grow back up to 6 or 8 inches or more, and then the sheep go through again. And it's just a big circle around the farm. Actually, the entire formula for why we have good quality meat is very simple. Rapidly growing young lambs on lush green feed. That's it, that's the whole secret. I just gave it all up. So anybody who can do that can do very high quality lamb.
Definition of sustainable is very complex. Everyone's going to have their own definition. For us, we want to be able to keep farming here by treating the soil well, and we want to get enough for our produce and for our effort to actually be able to pay for the place and retire from this operation without having to scramble after we do this to do something else to make money for retirement. And the economic issue is quite interesting. Very few of the customers think our stuff is not cost effective. In fact, I think a lot of our items are very comparable to the commercial organic distributors. But as far as the nutritional value of what they're getting from here, there's no comparison. They're getting it one day out of the field. And organic produced thousands of miles away, there's an extra week there. There's large-scale organic farms in various parts of the country and in other countries that are essentially just a monocrop of the one crop they're growing and are taken care of very much like a conventional field with sprays, happen to be organic approved sprays, but they're insecticides that kill insects indiscriminately generally. So it's not the healthiest way to grow things, I don't think. And I think the yield per area is better, is higher on a patchwork. We know we could sell more. We're at a level where we know my wife and I, the two of us, can still see almost everything as it goes into the box before it's shipped to the restaurant. If we start being really any bigger than this, then we start having to let things go a bit. So we think the way to preserve the quality as we have it now, we don't really feel like we could comfortably get any bigger.
Sustainable farms like these can provide great tasting food with minimal environmental impact. But can they feed the masses? Since sustainable farming accounts for a small fraction of American agriculture, the answer is not yet. For these types of farms to significantly grow in number, we first need good land near our cities. Unfortunately, these lands are disappearing at an alarming rate, about 1 million acres a year. Purchased by the city of Lake Oswego, Lusher Farm sits on the borderline of the urban growth boundary. A former dairy, the farm is a public green space with community gardens, sports field, and dog park. It is also a working farm, providing food for residents in the Portland metro area.
Because we're so close in, I think we get a lot of requests for all different kinds of people who want to come see what we're doing and talk to us about what we're doing. And so this is a group of planners from China who are making decisions about where farming is going to go and how cities are going to sprawl or not sprawl, take over farmland or not take over farmland. So they're here to sort of see what the Oregon model is and figure out if there's any pieces of it that they think would be useful for them to take back to China with them.
I feel.
Do people have any questions?
We want some fruit from you. That's our main question.
All right. We can pick cherry tomatoes, but you have to walk.
Community-supported agriculture, or CSA, originated in Switzerland and Japan in the 1960s. They operate through the commitment of individuals who annually buy shares in advance of receiving produce. Total shares cover farm costs and farmers' salaries. During the harvest season, shareholders get weekly deliveries of fresh vegetables.
The product is pre-sold, so we know how much we're going to grow and we know that it's already sold. So that whole marketing piece of it, I don't have to do that at the peak of the season when there's so many other things to do. The other piece of it that I really like is that transaction is kind of done. You do that with your customers at the beginning of the season, and then it just feels like you're giving them food and they're really excited about it. You know, there's no like, why are your carrots 10 cents higher than the other person's carrots? Or it's just like, here are these beautiful carrots and thank you for the beautiful carrots.
When you buy stuff directly from the farmer gets the money. They have a lot better control over not only their income and their price, but also the quality of what they're growing. And that's mediated by your feedback to them. Once you break the link between the grower and the person eating the food, the farmer essentially is powerless.
Most of the farmers that I know are doing better than they were, but not making enough necessarily to, I don't know, to have health care, to send their kids to college, to make the investments that they want to make in their farm. All of that, the economic piece of it just isn't there enough. And how do you say to these young people who really want to farm, okay, here you go, this is how you do it.
There are so few farmers in the United States now that they're not even included as an occupation in the census. So in the United States Census, you no longer see under occupations farming. We're lumped with all other. Less than 1% of the population, and yet we're expected to feed more and more and more people.
We can do it here. The question is just, really, do we want to? And going forward, are we going to continue to have that option? Are we going to do land use planning in a way that allows that to continue to be a viable option? Because once it's paved, then it takes 1,000,000 times more resources to grow food on it. To change that, like, let's not go there.
The first stop on Thursdays is at Food Change. It's part of the Food Bank of New York. It's a community kitchen
The leftover vegetables from the CSA distribution are part of that, or they also go to the kitchen. So there's 75 members there that live in the community. Some of them are low income, some of them are regular income, so that they can make the shares for the lower income people less expensive. Coming to the site has become a way to form a community in that neighborhood around the food. And then Harlem site, we were approached by Just Food, which is an organization in the city that connects communities to farmers. And they're really concentrating on areas in the city where there aren't farmers markets, the grocery stores don't have produce. They can really reach the people in the community who really need vegetables.
I guess, you know, when you're so cut off from something that is as real as vegetables and a farm and everything else, people really appreciate it. It's a heavy load this week. A lot of weight.
Professor Emeritus at Columbia University, Joan Dye-Gussow has been an advocate of local food since the 1970s. Her writings have influenced authors, chefs, farmers, and backyard gardeners.
When I set out 25 or 30 years ago, my reasoning was that people had to become more aware of where their food came from because they didn't know what their demands were doing to the world, and they still don't. I mean, I think my great example for me was when someone told me in the middle of the Ethiopian famine of whatever, 20 years ago, somebody had seen a box of imported green beans from Ethiopia, and somehow it just blew my mind. And then I heard that Haiti was exporting hogs to the United States. And I thought, the poorest country in the hemisphere has no business raising hogs for the United States. It's just insane. And so the evidence just piled up that we were just pulling food from all over, heedless of the conditions of how it was grown and who grew it and what their situation was. So I had this idea that you really had to relocalize the food supply. I wasn't, at that time, particularly focusing on energy, though I recognized the insanity of where we were. But I thought that the only way you could do it was to get people to eat locally, become aware of who was growing their food, maybe go visit the farm, somehow get them to realize what agriculture took. And so I decided I had to grow it. In order to figure out what I could eat year-round, I had to grow it myself. I wasn't doing it for some ideological reason. I just wanted to know how you could do it, what was lacking, what you could get, and so forth and so on. I haven't bought a vegetable probably in 10 years. At this point, I've proved it, and I could stop, but I don't know what I'd eat. And I feel the potential is there in green markets, in farmers markets, in just the contacts that people make around food, in gardening in your backyard, if you like. This community around growing food is a very powerful thing, I think.
This is a place where I don't feel alone. This is a place where I feel at home.
All right, you all did a very good job walking down here quietly and using your ears and your eyes to check out what's going on. So I told you earlier a little bit about what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a chance to explore the farm today and see how plants are growing on this farm. And we're gonna get a chance to pick some things and taste them. Have you guys ever been to
Sovie Island Organics is a CSA farm 15 minutes from Portland. In the past, they supplied Chef Corey Schreiber with seasonal produce for his restaurant. Now, Corey is managing the state of Oregon's Farm to School program, and the farm is playing host to urban children learning where food comes from.
So on this farm, we are growing vegetables for people to eat, for people in Portland. And do you know what vegetables are?
Yeah,
kind of a tough question. I already had somebody ask if they taste like cardboard, but they're not cardboard and they do not taste like cardboard. Do you know what they are, though?
For vegetarians.
For vegetarians to eat?
Yeah.
Vegetables are plant parts that we eat. Can you say that with me? Vegetables are plant parts that we eat.
When the kids come out here on the field trips, they get a chance to connect with some really fundamental parts of nature. That's in the forest as they're looking for wildlife. That's just in walking the ground and getting a sense of, as I talked about this morning, visibility, looking at a much wider level of the orchards and the farm and then the sky and then the water. And then when they come into the field, they get a sense of the quality of the plants that are out here, edible plants, of course. And hopefully they take that home and they get excited and they tell their parents, and it's a sense of like, yeah, we need to take you out there again. We need to continue keeping you in connected form with the land, with farms and agriculture.
So what came after the roots grew out of?
There are studies that show that children are more likely to eat fruits and vegetables if they have played a role in the growing and harvesting of those fruits and vegetables. It's really quite stunning because they will get down on their knees and they'll be asked to weed the bed and kind of clear out the spaces. And they'll be weeding and they'll be eating. And where the challenge may be, or the assumption is that they will never eat these greens in the cafeteria. I watch them eat them in the garden and I think, well, there's really no difference.
When fresh food does arrive in schools, it is well received. According to research done at the University of California, Davis, when children see fresh food in a salad bar at school, they will take it. In fact, they will eat an amount greater than the USDA daily requirement.
Relearning the food traditions, I know, is one of the greatest challenges that is in front of us for generations to come. And you hear a lot these days about trying to change the food in the schools, and can we make that change? Very, very difficult to turn back this dinosaur of a system that's kind of running loose, playing to the tune of 4 or 5 major food companies that are driving, the commodities and driving the great abundance of staples in this country.
It is a lack of fresh food and an overabundance of processed food that have put our kids at risk. The CDC estimates that 1 in 3 children born in the year 2000 will develop type 2 diabetes. For the first time in American history, this generation will have a shorter life expectancy than their parents.
Farmers do, as Barry Commoner wrote years ago, is they capture solar energy. And there was an article written in the Science magazine by 2 people named Steinhardt. They were the source of the always used statistic that it takes 10 calories of energy to make 1 calorie of food. So to make food something in which by the time you eat it, fossil energy is embedded is simply insane. And so anyone could have looked at that in the 1970s, in the early 70s, and said, we can't continue this.
If we take a moment to imagine a world without cheap fossil fuel, the industrial foods we now eat will grow far more expensive. Now imagine a world with limited oil resources in the not-too-distant future. Food production will be very different than it is today.
The local food movement then takes on primary importance in transforming our country's food system and energy use to something more sustainable. We may go solar and wind, but we can't become energy self-sufficient unless the local food system is integrated with other strategies to achieve sustainability.
The comparison of the cost of locally produced foods versus food sourced from anywhere in the world, which is what we have now in our global economic system. In season, a lot of times the local things are as cheap or cheaper than the things that you're going to be getting shipped in. I think overall, over the course of an entire year, clearly the local foods are more expensive. So it becomes a choice that people have to make.
Globalization has been sold to us as a given, that it's inevitable, that if we just relax, we'll get at least fantastic electronics out of it. But really, you won't get a great life. You need to control what you eat. You need to demand and reassert that control and be part of the process of what you eat. You shouldn't be buying garlic shipped in holds of ships from thousands of miles away between sex toys and flip-flops. You should look for your local sources, because if you're not in control, are you sure that those in control are looking after your best interests?
Food imports into the U.S. have increased fourfold in the past decade, swamping the FDA with the task of inspection. Of the nearly 200,000 shipments from China in 2006, less than 2% were sampled. Our insatiable demands for cheaper food is putting us at risk, and in more ways than one.
There's no culture in the world that spends less on food per capita or more on medicine than the United States. So to me, it's a painfully obvious truth. You can pay the doctor or pay the farmer. Ultimately, the question is, how do we reverse that, and how do we change people's perceptions and value of food? Change starts always, whether it's about abolitionism, whether it's about the women's suffrage movement, whether it's about issues of wartime. Those changes generally start with the affluent classes and work their way down in society. And I think we're seeing the same thing happen now with food. And now people want better food in the schools, they want better food for their children, they want better food for their homes. They just have to figure out a way to make it work in the rush world that we live in.
One of the great challenges of local food is to make it accessible to people. Food is, for many people, an affordable luxury. Even if you're on a limited income, in some circumstances, you're going to be able to buy the better tasting tomato just for the pleasure of the tomato. And that's true for some people. But in other circumstances, people are really strapped for income, and the government has in the past and can in the future intervene to make local foods affordable to people through specific programs. Society can take that decision to say that local food is something that's so important that we're going to make sure that everybody can have access to it.
Supporting local food doesn't mean that everything you eat must come from within a 100-mile radius. Nor does it mean that you can't have coffee, chocolate, or bananas. Supporting local food will, however, move sustainable agriculture further toward the mainstream and our future food needs.
There seems to be a sense that the local food movement is this chaotic drop in the bucket. The local food movement is part of a longer, more broadly based movement to reinvigorate our local economies. The number of farmers markets and community-supported agriculture projects and restaurants featuring local foods is growing exponentially. It's diffusely distributed. That's why we can't characterize a local food movement so easily, because it's going back into many pocketbooks and bringing wealth and well-being to many people rather than just all being shunted into one corporate headquarters.
Tired of the